Well, ladies and gentlemen, we got an Elvis movie. That's right. After the success of Bohemian Rhapsody, Rocket Man, other ones that are just all generic and formulaic, it's time we get Elvis back in the zeitgeist, baby. He's been gone for a while. And look, a couple things before we get into this review I think are important to mention, solely because I am of a certain age. Elvis is not an icon of my generation. I think he has permeated popular culture since the conception of like the showman of that guy, and he's been relevant since. But I really think with the way that social media and storytelling and pop culture has shifted in the past couple decades, his iconography is no longer as relevant or important as it is to a certain demographic, and that demographic is mine, and I think younger. I know who he is solely because of references made in things that I've watched. I've never actually known Elvis's story or identity. I've known his identity and story through things that are talking about it. So I think he is an icon that is fading, and his importance to pop culture is slowly losing its mark. It's not going to be there forever, and I think we could actually see a point in time where an Elvis joke isn't going to be relevant to the crowd watching it, and he's slowly going to fade away. So this movie, it really feels like it's not aimed for my generation or my demographic. It's not a story we want to hear. You're not going to parties or hearing things like Elvis Presley. I can understand Queen because of Freddie Mercury as an icon. I can understand Elton John because he's still making music and is still relevant. But Elvis isn't just that guy anymore. So when I went into this screener to see this, I wasn't shocked to see that I was one of the youngest people there. There was probably the vast majority over the age of 40 and 50. I'd say at least 90% of the theater was that age. And I'm like, that's cool because I like that generation and that demographic coming to movies again. Top Gun Maverick kind of brought them out to that too. It's fascinating to me that that's the target this is going for because it's really showy. And maybe I'm valuing what that demographic wants in a movie because this is Baz Luhrmann up to the max. The opening 50 minutes are insanely just like out there and crazy and big edits and big destructive pieces. I'm like, this is a lot. So demographic that's watching this really interested in that kind of storytelling? I guess they are, because all of the smiles and feedback I saw while leaving the theater was positive. A lot of people liked this movie. And you know what? It's not bad. It's not the formulaic biopic that we've seen for all these musicians before. It is different enough where I'm like, there is definitely a message that they are saying about the man in here. And there's stuff about it that does fall into that trap. But overall, I can't hate this movie. I can respect the choices it makes because more than any other thing in this genre, I think this is one of the most confident and competent movies put together. Baz Luhrmann said, I know the style of movies I make. I know the type of cinematography and editing and choices I do. I know how to make that work for Elvis Presley. And it did. You know, he told an authentically Elvis story that got everything you needed to capture for that world put into one distilled format. The upbringing, the world he was a part of, where he got his inspiration from, where he took things from people, the way he played off of other people, the way he created his own identity in this world of Tom Parker. You really see that building up here, and it's authentic. And sure, it is stylized and dramatized for a fictitious story, but there's still something to be said about the way this feels very Elvis. It doesn't shy away from the insecurities. Even if it does breeze past them at times, it's not afraid to admit that this guy wasn't the best guy. And that, I think, is something I value more about this film than any other in the genre. It's that we are telling an authentic story. Like, he doesn't walk away the hero at the end. He's the victim. And that's okay. Now, the thing that really upsets me about that is the film wants to play the victim card that we, the audience, are the downfall of Elvis, where it's like, because he loved us so much, we're the ones that put him into the grave. I don't like that angle. It was the drugs. It was the drugs, okay? I know the need to say that because it kind of makes it like, look what the spotlight does to somebody. He wanted the spotlight. He chose his path. He was a grown man. If he wanted something else, he could have called for it. So I don't like the way that was played up, but I respect everything else involved in telling that story. It was honest, it was hard at times, and it tried something this genre's not normally known for, so I respect that a lot. And if you don't like Baz Luhrmann, you're not going to like this movie, because there's just big editing choices and dissolves and cutaways and freeze frames, and it's just beautiful looking. There's no other film like this. I would compare it to Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, where it's like a big blockbuster film that is actually trying to be creative in its transitions and its storytelling. I think this worked better than Multiverse of Madness, but I just respect the hell out of it for that. It's really impressive to see this big of a movie take these kind of swings and these stuff, because out of every movie I've seen this year, this one has the best editing. It is so beautiful. The way it cuts from scene to scene. It's so hard to do like a beautiful transition when you are using music as your cue, where like the music beat gets you to another scene, and the way it seamlessly does that for a lot of these songs in this is really good. It's impressive. It is beautiful storytelling. The production design is off the charts. The world that we're building here, the costumes we are building here, it's all very authentic and cool. And it feels very honest in that regard, where it's like, no, we're not going to glitz and glamour it up. This guy had a certain aesthetic to him. Here's the way we're changing through the times to see things. I did like that. There was a beautiful choice of just lighting, where it starts off very hopeful in the beginning, turns very gloomy in the end. And I'm like, that is such a smart choice, because your audience is not going to pick up on some of that stuff when we don't explain it. So showing it works. I really dug that. I thought that made a lot of cool stuff in this story work, and it was very impressive to see that. It's really Baz Luhrmann, and I know I just talked about The Great Gatsby recently, and I didn't like that movie, but that was more like the story of Gatsby. This is that just perfectly done, just like a beautiful idea of just like Graceland, and of Hollywood, and of Vegas. It like all looks so authentic and cool. And the thing that really ties this together is Austin Butler. Like, this guy is delivering a fantastic performance, and it's there. It has all the emotional range it needs to. At times it does feel kind of stiff, but I think he is really just giving it his all. As this being like his big outing as an actor, he's been working forever. I've seen him in stuff when I was younger. He's been working forever. As a big outing, you can't do better than this. You really can't. This is a character study we don't see anymore in these big films. And it's weird to say that this movie's like a big blockbuster, but it is. It had a sold-out theater. It has a huge budget. It has actual talent behind it. This is what films used to be like before they became franchise commercial. It's impressive to me. And I think this is going to get a lot of award nominations, and I could definitely see him being nominated. I don't know if he'd win, but the performance he is giving is one in a generation. I don't think any other actor could really pull it off as honest and earnestly as he did. So that's very cool to see, and it made me very happy. Just like seeing a relatively unknown guy bringing this guy to life. It really just like, if we had it as like Harry Styles or Timothée Chalamet, we'd feel that instantly. But Austin was able to capture a certain magic that really worked and was really authentic, and I did like that a lot. I also really like that this film doesn't shy away from where the inspiration for Elvis's music came from, because this is a political piece. It's also like a piece of the time it was a part of, where you see Elvis reacting to the deaths of certain like figures throughout that time. It's very interesting. One thing I do want to note is this is going to bring out a lot of interesting people to the theaters that don't really go to theaters. There's one scene in the movie where people are reacting to Robert Kennedy's death, and you hear that through like the sound of a gunshot indicating he was shot. Somebody in my theater thought that Robert Kennedy was in the room with Elvis and got shot there. Didn't understand that it's supposed to simplify something else happening in the time. So this movie bringing out a new demographic is kind of cool, but it's also a demographic that doesn't normally see movies, so it's definitely going to just like have an interesting show when you go. And I could probably tell a whole story about my experience watching this film, but that's neither here nor there. Austin Butler did great. Baz Luhrmann did great. Tom Hanks did fine. I didn't really love Tom Hanks in this. It was a caricature, and that was kind of annoying, but playing it up, I guess, that's kind of fun. He was probably my biggest letdown for this. The other thing I don't like, and this might just be my personal bias, was the Priscilla Presley stuff. I think they brushed over it too easily and tried to make the figure more romantic as opposed to accurate. Now, they do say teenaged. They say teenaged when it comes to Priscilla. They don't actually specify what her teenaged age would be. But let me put it this way. Elvis is in his 20s when he meets her. She is on the younger half of her teens. It's not really good. So that's weird. And if you are somebody who doesn't like Elvis and you don't like them trying to glorify this man into like a commercial product, you're going to have some hesitations with this, because I know I did. Look, and again, this is my bias. This has nothing to do with the actual film. I'm not the biggest fan of Elvis. I don't think the guy deserves all the accolades he's given. I think he changed music and rock and roll and how we perceive stylized like performance, but he's not my favorite guy in this genre, and I think there's been more inspirational people before and after him. That's just it. And it doesn't glorify his death. It just says, look what we did here. There's something interesting about that, but I don't think it's perfect. So, well, this film is one of the most competent films made this year, one of the best edited, best directed, best acted. There are still some hesitations where it is limited by the biopic formula, where it does get too formulaic and it shies away from the really interesting and intense stuff of Elvis. But I had a great time watching it. There was a really intense feeling in the theater for every scene. You really understood, like, this is going to make a lot of the older demographic happy. And that's what I really want. Because, look, these movies are made for kids nowadays. Like, you know, what adult wanted to see Jurassic World? Like, what person over 70 wanted to see Jurassic World? The fact that Elvis is here and you can actually empathize with this character for a new generation, that's kind of exciting. And I think if you have the ability to see it, it's actually worth checking out, just in terms of the filmmaking and technical prowess of it, but also just seeing an incredible performance by Austin Butler. There's a lot of stuff going on in here. I think most of it is positive. So Elvis, I am going to give, oh man, I hit the table, a 6 out of 10. Thank you guys for watching this review. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. As always, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Elvis left the building.